For the first session, which I'm going to chair, we're going to discuss and perhaps digest and debate on the importance of SME vis-a-vis Islamic finance instrument and vehicle. Because SME is not financing per se, it's more of financing plus developmental processes of build up new young startup company, more small rather than medium, and perhaps the medium enterprise moving forward. For this session, we are very fortunate to have with us three speakers from three different perspectives. We have, if I can invite first Mr. M.Nazri from Singapore to be on the stage, and Sheikh Salah bin Hilal al-Mawali from Director General, Ministry of Commerce, Oman, and Robert Ru from South Korea. Yeah. I won't be reading their CVs because they are available in the program book. In the interest of time, I will go straight to the topics and perhaps start by saying that SME is very close to the heart of every one of us. But in reality, we have not seen many banks, many funds, many funders are perhaps willing and ready to commit their fund to develop the SME. Normally, when we are small, no one comes to you. When you grow big, only then people come to you, which is too late and too little. So this is the culture that we have not inculcated in our culture. Unlike in the Western world, the venture capitalists are there to support the great ideas, great setup of the company so that they can bring the company up all the way perhaps to IPO. And this is the culture that we are missing at the moment. And we hope that Islamic finance in nature is very much equity-based structure, could put some solution to our current and contemporary problems of SMEs. To discuss this topic, we have three speakers. If I can invite the first speaker, perhaps to give the overview of the Omani landscape here in Oman. We have with us Sheikh Salah bin Hilal al-Mawali, the Director General, Ministry of Commerce, Oman. فليتفضل مشكورا.
Thank you very much. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. في البداية أشكركم أشكر الحضور وأشكر أيضا اللجنة المنظمة لاستضافتي في هذا الموقع، وأتمنى من الله العلي القدير أن أوفق وأنقل صورة واضحة للحاضرين اليوم عن المؤسسات الصغيرة والمتوسطة، وراح أتطرق نوعا ما عن التمويل الإسلامي للمشاريع الصغيرة بصفتي شخص غير مختص في البنوك الإسلامية وهي بنوك حديثة على السلطنة. First of all, I would like to thank you. Thank you very much to give me these opportunities. And I would like also to thank the organizer who invited me to be here to be one of the panelists. I will give a brief because I know we are short of time, we don't have that much time. So I would like to tackle the problem and I would like to be really focused in some of the issue which we have to think about it loudly. First of all, if we think about the banking in Oman, in banking sector in Oman, they don't land the SMEs much. If we go detail, it's less than 2% they land for SMEs because of different thinking. They say it's high risk, it's really difficult to evaluate the business, they don't understand the nature of SMEs, and it is the barrier, it's a little bit, high. I read the World Bank report, and they mention in the World Bank report that the default in SME sector in Oman, it's 2.6. Why is 2.6? Because a lot of collaterals. They take a lot of collaterals, and that's why this percentage is not that much high. But if we go on the other hand to ODB, Development Bank of Oman, now it's reduced around 9%. Before it was 14%. Now it's around 9%. So SME is an area. And I thought the Islamic Bank, they have to play a good role in that. Why? Because this is an opportunity. 99 to 98% of the enterprises in Oman is small and medium. And that small and medium required money to grow. Most of the bank in Oman, as I already mentioned before, from their total portfolio, less than 2% land the SMEs because they don't see the opportunities. But the people who see the opportunities, and I will mention a few names here, like Bank Muscat, and they start a little bit early with Al-Wathba program to lend the SMEs, they make a lot of money. And why they make a lot of money? Because the interest which they charge, the small is around 9%, large cooperation is around 5%. So if they can evaluate the risk properly, and if they know the nature of SMEs business, I think this is a huge area where they have to focus on. So the Islamic Bank, they should focus on SMEs in Oman. As already we say, we have around 75,000 enterprises in Oman, around 73 to 72,000 SMEs, a final stat which we get it from the Ministry of National Economy before the State Department right now. So here it's an area. And here an area for the Islamic Bank to focus and have to work hard. Because until now, there is few banks that touch that area. I know when they open the Islamic Bank, it will be open the door for everyone. Even the bank already, they used to lend as a normal practice in the bank before. So this is one thing we have to think about it loudly. And we have to get a solution for it. Because each country, they have different barrier. And each country, they have different problems than other. On the other hand, we have around 1,416,000 expatriates who work in Oman. Around maybe 70% of those people, they have small business and they run it by their own under the sleeping partner. We call it sleeping partner or undercover partner, or you can call it. The stats it's mentioned from the Minister of Manpower, around 82% of those people, they are not educated. So here in Oman, we have a problem with SMEs. We have this is, and on the other hand, we have Omani who graduate from high school or from universities and who don't have a business mentality, who don't have the natural of understanding the business, how to run it properly, who don't have dignity and passion to that business so that will grow and they make money. So we do have two barriers, a barrier from expatriate, which I am not against it. I think we have to have expatriate, but we have to have those people who is educated, who can add value to the country, who can help the country, who can implement technology, who can provide good service. But most of the small business here in Oman, they don't implement technology, they don't provide good service for the people. So most of the people, sometimes they are searching for a good service outside of the country. So here also an area we have to think about it carefully as government. And I speak because, as already he gave little about me, I am in charge of SMEs in Oman. Director General of Small and Medium in the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. So this is what we have as barrier. What's the solution? The solution, government, they have to create an incentive package for Omani. What is incentive package? I think we have to work closely, and we work closely with educational institute. We work closely with the private sector. We work closely with the small and medium. We do have roundtable discussion. We cannot get the magic solution because solution is not easy sometimes also to implement it. Sometimes the solution is cost. It's required a lot of money to implement it. Sometimes it requires the people who can implement it in the proper way. We in government, sometimes we don't have those people who can implement the idea in the ground so people, they can get benefit because they don't have an experience. And we cannot give advice sometimes or good advice for the SMEs because already we don't have that kind of experience. And we cannot, if we don't have the thing in our hand, we cannot express it to others. So here I want to stop because I don't want to take the time from others. But this, I think, an important issue. And I think it is good to have this kind of seminar, this kind of conference, so that we can change the view, we can thought loudly, and we can get a good solution. But the most important, not to think loudly and not to get a good solution, but to implement it in reality. And the most important, that people, they get benefit in the ground. And they see and they feel what we already provide for the people. Thank you very much again. Thank you.
Shukran. Thank you very much, Sheikh Salah, for your helicopter view as well as both micro and macro issues facing the SME here in Oman, perhaps applicable to other part of the world. The bankings are not the friend to SME. the bankings are the friend to establish company when they are strong, when they need less help compared to the SME. Let me move now to the second speaker from Seoul. In fact, yesterday Robert has shared with you how was Korea in 1950s after the Second World War and the Korean War, and how the country, we have to salute them for what they have done to transform the country from what they used to be and what are there at the moment. Even they are undertaking or outperforming Japan from the technology point of view to some extent. So perhaps SME is one of their recipe and ingredient to become what they become today. So without further ado, can we welcome Robert to the stage? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Daud. Okay, today's presentation is about SME in South Korea, as well as how Islamic Finance private equity fund can actually help the industry as well. As Dr. Daud recapped from my presentation yesterday, basically Korea is a very tiny country, 1/3 of Oman. Our history, the modern history, the first 50 years from 1900, we had a very dark history where we had the colonization from Japan and the war, plus the natural resource that we don't have. But we are fortunate to have one resource, not enough, but just enough, which is a human resource. Basically, after the war, when the government actually gave direction to the industry to avoid too much domestic competition, so to say. So they kind of dictated Samsung to build heavy industry construction. They told Hyundai to build cars. They told Daewoo to focus on construction and so on. Basically, that's how we grew from the 60s to almost to the 90s. From 8 billion USD GDP in 1970, we grew to $1 trillion in 2010. And we are the 7th largest exporter in the world, and we are the 9th largest economy in the world today. Of course, that government-controlled economy has always side effects, which is, in the beginning, the conglomerates grew based upon a very strong small, medium-sized enterprise. But once the market export volume kind of reached its peak and saturated, the conglomerates started to take over some of the SME markets. So basically, today, the numbers, the small, medium-sized enterprise in South Korea today is little over 3 million companies, and the larger conglomerates is about 3,000. So basically, the SME industry, the company number-wise, is 99.9%, whereas they hire about 87% of the total employees in South Korea. Yet, the exports from SME is decreasing from 42% to 33%. The government, together with the industry, especially the conglomerates, today they are more focusing on Sangseng movement. Sangseng is a Korean word. Actually, it's a Chinese character. The first word, sang, means together. The second word, seng, means life. So it's together, it means co-survival. So basically, the government is asking the conglomerates willingly to come up with investments and funds to help their suppliers to gain more competitiveness in the world. Basically, those are the KT, Samsung, Hanwha, LG, POSCO, and Daewoo Shipbuilding, and so on. Plus, the government also implement the sovereign institutions to strengthen their mandate to help the small, medium-sized enterprise, especially for Korean Finance Center with their total asset of 65 billion USD. They have been so far investing only to small, medium-sized enterprise industry in South Korea, but starting next year, they are funding small, medium-sized enterprise, the Korean companies that are willing to go outside of Korea. And this is a fund that we are working with KOFC, the Amanie group. We are setting up $50 million, up to $100 million SME fund. It's a Malaysian government and the Korean government collaboration fund. Basically, the Amanie group is trying to do a similar fund with the different governments around the globe. So this is basically the structure of the fund. The Malaysian Ministry of Finance putting in half of the total committed fund. KOFC, the Korean institution, is putting half of it. Basically, the managers are managing this fund. The unique feature of this fund is we basically ask the Korean SME to find a partner in Malaysia. So basically, the target, investment target would be a joint venture formed between a Korean company as well as a Malaysian company, and the fund would be investing up to 49% of the total equity. And this would be an ideal concept where the top portion is a Korean conglomerate joint venturing with Malaysian company and set up a joint venture in Malaysia. Our fund would be investing small portion to that, but the most important part is the bottom part, where we invite the existing suppliers in South Korea that had been supplying to the Korean conglomerates in Korea. We ask them to relocate to Malaysia and find a Malaysian partner with it. So basically, this would complete a industry, the tier 1 as well as the tier 2, where we help the small, medium-sized enterprise. So basically, the fund that we are trying to create is a true government-to-government invested fund. The fund will support industry joint ventures between one country and the Korean companies. And every dollar the Malaysian government is putting into this fund potentially will attract a matching fund from the Korean government, as well as twice as much from the Korean companies as an equity, plus the technology the Korean SMEs as well as the Korean conglomerates brings to the economy. And KOFC is also interested in doing duplicating this fund in Malaysia as well as in other Islamic countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert, for that explanation. Basically, to recap what Robert has said just now, basically, for SME, they need two things, basically. Correct me if I'm wrong, Robert. They need the funding and the helping hand for the transfer of technology. So South Koreans are willing to put $1 for $1 local investment, plus there's a $2. So basically, when you put $1 in Oman, for example, the other parties in Korea will put $3. This is one aspect of the funding. The other problem facing SME, the technology partners, after putting the $3 for $1 worth of $4 worth of equity, they will bring their own technology partners to partner with your local companies here in Oman, either for small or medium enterprise companies. So this is something that I wanted to conclude what Robert has been trying to impress on all of you. And this should be done according to Shariah principle of either equity financing or ijarah financing, sale and leaseback. There are many instruments that can be used to manage the development of a project through this matching fund together with South Korean Tier 1 and Tier 2 companies. The third speaker, whom I know recently for the last 1 or 2 years, he is, from my perspective, one of the great minds in analytics. He can analyze the behavior of the company, the balance sheet of the company, and can convert that into technology so that the technology can work to assess the quality of a particular company. And this is very important for SME, for the funder and for the recipient of the funding. So our speaker is M.Nazri, Chief Executive Officer, Global Shariah Technology Center in Singapore. I'm sure that you're going to, be impressed with his presentation, but he has only 7 minutes on the other side of the coin. So let us welcome Mr. M.Nazri to the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Daud. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I would like to thank the organizer once again, but since I have only 7 minutes, I have to reduce my courtesy statements. But my angle is very simple. We have a specific role that is to improve the socio-economics of more than 50 countries all over the world through SME development. This is something we are passionate about. This is something that we believe technology innovation could do a lot. And through discussions with the higher authorities at the cabinet level, at the ministry level, across various stakeholders in Oman and elsewhere, we've begun to crunch a couple of information as well as statistics on why we believe that the SME development is going to be the next push for Oman. Right? There are 3 simple questions that I like to address. Okay, and this time around, we cover from a perspective of public and private partnerships or public-private review of SME development. First is, yes, we've seen billions of dollars all over the world being spent on SMEs. We've seen many programs, many policies have been created to help SMEs. But to what extent or how effective have the SME programs and policies been for policymakers all over the world, in Singapore, in Malaysia, in the Middle East, right, in US and Europe? And how do you actually measure whether the policymakers have achieved their key performance indicators, or what you call KPIs for short? And to what extent? If you spend $1 million to help 100 SMEs, how do we measure them and how effective have these been in terms of creating or achieving some goals that you set out to do? In the first place, are we setting the right goals? Through discussions and projects that we have with all over the world, and best practices that we garnered, we will share later on in the next few minutes on what are the basic dimensions that policymaker must consider, and of course some trends on what Oman's balance sheet will look like. Taking into account some medium and large enterprise in Oman, we compare that against ASEAN companies using our tools. So we get to see in a snapshot what these are. So, and again, through examples given by Mr. Robert and Sheikh Salah, we've understood that Islamic economics is important, and as an SME development is an integral part of Islamic economics. Even though I'm not a Sharia scholar, but we know that through adoption of the principles and essence of Islamic economics, things will be better in terms of giving more jobs, amongst others. Now, I put across here KPI measurement approaches that one can consider. 90% of most policymakers all over the world adopt the traditional approach of using employment and revenue as a basis of KPI measurement. And they use headline numbers. If they look at your revenue of a certain size, if you look at your employee size of a certain scale, okay, they will then decide how much grant to give it to you, how much money to give it to you, and how much support they should give to you, especially in the media. Right? And the modus operandi of measuring the KPI currently is very manual. Okay, and because of that, you can never get the right sense of what are the underlying drivers and the factors that cause the SMEs to go down or go south or go north. If you look at the future, the modern approach is actually to not look at headline numbers or top line numbers, You look at what are the factors that affect employment and revenue of that business, of that SME. Then, based on those, you can predict what are likely effects or what are likely achievement in terms of employment and revenue. All right, and beyond manual approach, we could do automated approach and segmentation of analyzing by sector, by industry, by balance sheet profile, by qualitative factors, and amongst others, at a click of a button. And this is where the one-day turnaround time versus 90 man days for 100 companies become very, very big difference. What we want here is to be a proactive approach of managing Islamic economics in a form of SME development. So how do we go about doing that? So this slide effectively shows you the traditional approach and the old and the new approach of doing things, right? And if you look at why are banks and financiers or investors have apprehension to lend to SMEs, as mentioned by Sheikh Salah, this could be some of the reasons. We look at 5 factors such as business performance, risk appetite, stress handling, ability to handle balance sheet stresses, shareholder value, and asset efficiency. You will realize that all of them have challenges in each of these. All we need to do is to look beyond sales and profit, right? All we need to do is to find out and understand what causes sales to decline, what causes sales to be high but margins are low, what causes the risk appetite for them to be high, what causes the banks to be adverse to the gearing levels that the SMEs have. Okay, and at the end of the day, are SMEs compensating, giving enough returns to the shareholders? Because if they're not, yeah, sure, the investors are not investing enough because the returns are so low. So these are some of the things that we've identified all over the world, and including Oman. Okay, when we look at some of the analysis later on. Here you can see in a snapshot how Oman companies stack up against ASEAN companies, particularly in Singapore and Malaysia. You can say that in terms of sales growth, an Omani company typically grows about 8% on average. This is a study of 120 Oman financial and business indicators, in about 5 to 6 different sectors. And you can see in terms of sales growth, ASEAN companies tend to outperform Omani businesses. However, in terms of net profit margin, the gap isn't as big. Okay, so essentially, Omani is a high margin game relatively to the ASEAN business in terms of business performance. Using our scorecards, using our tools, we are also able to analyze within a day of how 120 Omani companies measure against 1,500 ASEAN businesses. In this case, in terms of their risk-return appetite, you can see that Omani businesses take on a higher degree of liabilities. Liabilities may not just relate to debt and loans, right? But the creditors, the trade financing issued by their trade suppliers and, trade partners. You can see that liabilities exceed asset by 100%, yet the ROE is much smaller, okay, and they're taking more risk for lower returns. And you can see that an Omani business tends to take more short-term financing compared to the ASEAN counterpart, almost the same, but essentially a large part of them, 60-40. 40% are short-term liabilities and 60% are long-term. So the increasing number of the Omani's balance sheet are much more into shorter-term financing as the years go by. And in terms of how they use their assets to generate profits, we look at return on assets. You can see that the profits generated out of an Omani's asset base tends to be smaller than an ASEAN business. So what we are saying here is a situation where we set benchmarks, okay? We set comparatives, we set comparables, and we look at certain factors that basically explain these 5 factors. How did they manage their profit, cost, and sales? How did they manage their risk levels and appetite? How did they, if you were to stress test them, if sales were to drop by 5, 10, 30%, can an Omani's balance sheet handle the fixed cost, overheads, variable cost? Okay, and how much returns does an Omani business give to their shareholders at the end of the day? And how did they use their assets, their resources to generate profits? Are we doing enough? So there's definitely room for improvement for an Omani businesses to grow even further. And this is where it becomes an important perspective. Now, my last slide, which I will just go down straight to the last slide, is that what can we do then for financiers and financial institutions? We realize that in the context of SME lending, SME investments, which is steered into 2 verticals, there has to be more efficient capital management. If you are able to size up the risk of the SMEs correctly, if you are able to measure the returns, okay, vis-a-vis the industry, vis-a-vis the sector, vis-a-vis the stage of the life cycle, chances are when you price your companies, right, when you price the loans, okay, the profit sharing ratios, the mudarabah structures, you'll be able to create a more efficient capital management. You will manage your capital better. You will be able to set aside your provisions better, okay, reflective of the exposure that you have. High risk, high return, low risk, low returns, right? And in terms of asset quality, you can use this methodology of financial benchmarking or business benchmarking, using both qualitative and quantitative, to control your non-performing loans or non-performing accounts. Everybody is afraid of risk, seems to be, right? Everybody don't want to lose money, all right? But we're encouraged to take risks. In the wise words of Dr. Daud Bakar, we're encouraged to take risks. The question is, how do we manage those risks? How do we measure those risks, and how do we structure some protection measures, defensive measures to manage those risks? I think this is where technology comes into play. This is where technology can be used to reduce costs, lower your risk, and yet optimize your returns. Okay, and these are some of the examples of how you can actually measure and manage your risk accordingly. So in essence, what we are trying to say here is, okay, beyond a public-private partnership model of helping SMEs in the development, okay, of their business as well as the economy, we must be able to measure how effective the SME policies have been. We must be able to measure whether they have achieved our KPIs. And the KPIs must be measured not as a top-line numbers, but at the industry level, at the enterprise level, or even at the stage of the business life cycle. These are the new trends that we're seeing happening. Because if you keep measuring the same thing over and over again, you think that it has contributed enough, but maybe it has not. Maybe it has only achieved artificially X% of what you intend to do, instead of the Y% that you set out to do. And by tackling this early and tackling this at the root causes, you'll be able to diagnose and prescribe an action plan, all within a period of short time. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your kind attention, and to the esteemed panel members for sharing their part of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazri, for that interesting presentation. And the balance scorecard that Nazri mentioned is also applicable to other sectors of banking, finance, takaful, to screen the health of the recipient of funding and perhaps the attitude of the funder, whether they are risk taker or medium risk taker or low risk taker. So everything can be applied using the artificial intelligence. Of course, they have put all the relevant questions to extract the relevant conclusion at the end of the day. So this is something that we can, we have seen in the morning how FWU has used the IT to manage the insurance policy within 10 to 12 minutes for a policy. Now we have seen how the balance scorecard could be used to, to measure the risk of 100 companies in one day instead of 90 days or man days or man hour, sorry, man days. So this is something that we try to put forward to help the SME, the policymakers, the funders, and the recipient, so everybody will be on the right footing. Everybody will be assessed, not only the recipient but also the funder. We have to assess, are we genuine enough to help the SME from our perspective, our thinking process, and so on and so forth. So that would conclude the first round of the presentation. I will open the floor for some Q&A, if you allow me, for 5 to 10 minutes. Let me see the first three hands, okay? The sister over here, the second sister, and the third brother. Can you have the mics this side of the hall? The mic, please. Okay, Ashabul Yamin. Then we go to not Shimal Yasar. Okay, we're still waiting for, sorry sister, coming. This side, the sister side. Be brief and quick if possible.
My question is from Sheikh Salah, and I think he saw that coming. Now the first step before SMEs can actually benefit from Islamic finance is to have one set of rules and measures, and what exactly is the definition for SMEs. Whatever definition we have in Oman from Ministry of Commerce is different from what the banks have and what they apply in their lending. That also applies to non-banking financial companies. First step is to have this set of definition. Do we have it in place? Is it under process? Where have we reached on that? And the second thing is about the 100 million fund that has been announced, and it's supposed to start working. How is it going to be financing regarding a Sharia compliance these small enterprises? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sister at the back,
Whatever I want to ask, my friend already introduced it.
Okay.
But I want to know that how, what we know that there will be two banks that are going to provide Islamic finance coming. So how they are going to help SMEs in their business? And even though we know that they are still commercial bank, they are providing this service for the SMEs. So how they will be, the Islamic finance, how will it will be different from commercial banks?
Thank you, Sister. Imran?
Assalamu alaikum. Not a question for Sheikh Salah. Just following on from those first two questions, I used to look after the microfinance for the bank, which was the largest microfinance program in Australia, which is about $100 million program. Is there any microfinance for small businesses, Islamic or even conventional, for perhaps the businesses a level lower than the SMEs? Thanks.
Okay, you become very popular today, Sheikh Salah.
Well, the first question regarding the definition, we do have definition of the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. We revised it recently, so we take the number of employee and the turnover for micro and small and medium.
Okay.
Our definition as government official and the bank, because everyone have his right to evaluate the business in his own understanding. So we don't enforce the bank or we don't enforce other organization to take our definition. But in the end, all of them, it will be fall down under the small and medium enterprises. So if the answer is clear. The second question about the 100 million which they announced, that I don't announce it myself because it's not, I am a board member. That's about the offset program, which government are working on right now. Now it's in the final stage. And I think we are actually fighting, and the previous minister also, he's fighting to lend for small and medium with the low interest rate, around 4% interest rate, subsidized the other by the offset program itself. If it will fall under Sharia complaint, or if they have a new product for Sharia complaint, until now we don't know. So that it's required also a people, but we have to look after it. We, in our department, at the SMEs department, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, we do have a loan bank guarantee. And we try to work closely with MIFF, the organization from Singapore, that how can we also have a Sharia complaint under the loan bank guarantee. And this is an area we have to diagnose, we have to study and make research and conduct a lot of things to see how can we move forward. Because the loan bank guarantee, I think, in the Middle East, not in the Middle East, the GCC, the Oman, it's the country who implemented. And we implement it right now as a pilot study. And the pilot study will finish in 2012, end of this year. So 2013, it will be open for everyone. I think I cover your question as well also. I agree.
Gives a very good opportunity for Islamic finance to take its place in developing the SME sector in Oman.
That fund is not only for SMEs, but it is mainly focused for SMEs. 100 million Riyal Omani, and this is an offset program. You have to read about what offset it's mean. So there is meaning for offset, and from where that money came. I don't want to mention everything right now here because we don't have time. If we go details, it will take a lot of huge discussions, so we don't want to go to details. But in the end, that fund, it will serve the purpose. It will help the small, it will help the medium, it will help the micro. We hope that the small and medium, they can get benefit from this fund. When it will be launched, when it will be announced, we don't know until now. It is still under process to register. Regarding your question, there is a Senate program in Oman, which is with a 2% administration fee. So that one, it is under Sharia complaint. It is under the Sharia complaint. And also ODB in Oman, they give loan with 3% and they give loan without interest. They give 5,000 Riyal Omani with no interest for those people who want to create a small business. So we do have in Oman a technical arm and we have financial arm. We have more than 9 organizations who support the small and medium in terms of fund. Most of that fund, it is government, some of them fund, some of them government, they are helping. We have youth fund. There is a growth initiative from Shell. There is ODB. There is Senate program. We do have loan bank guarantee. And there is an offset program which will be launched recently. And we do have also a certain idea, and we are searching right now to implement it. So there is a lot of fund which give, I can say under Sharia complaint, it is enough or it's not enough. We cannot say as government official, but we have to hear from the people. But I think it's not enough. We need more. In small, they need more help. As already he mentioned, Robert, they need technical help and they need financial help, both. But technical, it's most important, I think. And we conduct a study here in Oman through Sultan Qaboos University. Around 36% they say they need financial help. And 46% they say they need technical and technology transfer and all of that. So we have to work hard. How can we provide, or what we provide in terms of technology, in terms of training and education, all of that.
Any other comment from other panelists, briefly, Robert or Nazri?
Just that we always talk about banks not being able to help the SMEs. It's actually all around the world, even in Korea. That's why a lot of government mandates dictate the sovereign funds, at least to help. When I talk to the sovereign funds in South Korea, basically they are also very afraid they would be losing money because they are very, very conservative. However, there are percentages that they can actually expend and they can actually take that loss. And basically that would drive funding the SMEs. If you go to a commercial bank, same thing in South Korea. They would ask for collaterals. They would, because the banks, they're holding the savings of the public, so they cannot take that risk to invest in venture capital as well as small SMEs.
Okay.
Just quickly,
Yeah.
in SME development, a large chunk of it is actually socio-economic in focus. So the government is not expected to take 100% of the risk. The private sector is not expected to take 100% of the risk either. So in such a setting, we've seen many places or many jurisdictions where a public-private partnership model, a PPP model in SME financing, SME investment, in SME development becomes critical because the risk and returns are being shared across 2 to 3 parties. So until that happens, the issue of whether it's enough, not enough, whether it's technical financials are being met in the short, medium or long term, until that happens, we will continually see in every dialogue, every forum, every studies, the inherent and perennial gaps that will always happen. I mean, the way to go for it is to adopt a certain PPP model to address that part because it's a social-economic focus. Everybody owns the ecosystem. Everybody has a part to play in the ecosystem. So even back in Singapore, we started guaranteeing at 90%. Of course, contemporary or conventional way, right? Then reduced to 75%, then no more guarantee already during the credit crisis of 2008 and 9. So there is a, thrust towards sustainability in every PPP model that one considers.
Okay. I can allow up to perhaps 2 questions, the gentleman, yourself and the gentleman at the back. And be quick as well.
Thank you. Well, Jack, to ask my friend here, I don't know, based on the tool that you have been mentioned, from the experience that we understand or we know that, I don't know how easy that tool could be utilized with SMEs. We know that most of the SMEs, especially here in Oman, lack of documentation, there is less things in giving the real numbers even though.
Okay.
So I don't know how easy that tool could be utilized. Can be used by normal business people or...
Thank you very much. Message is very clear. Last one.
I would like to ask about if it's possible to make a pool of funds for financing SMEs through Islamic finance. Now, since there is, this is a suggestion rather, why don't we, to boost the Islamic finance, have a fund to finance the SMEs as the Korean gentleman stated that government have to take an initiative to help them. I have seen that there is a lot of initiatives in the country, but there is no coordination among these. Everybody is doing something in his own. So my suggestion is to create a fund and give it an incentive, as in the morning or yesterday Dr. Mahathir said there should be incentives to develop the Islamic finance. So that's a good opportunity to do such.
Thank you very much. I have to stop at that juncture because we have another session, another interesting discussion on Sukuk. Perhaps panelists, last round for the two questions.
Thank you, Shaikh. The answer to it is pure and simple. The answer is yes, it's easy to use. And to prove a point, about 4 or 5 months ago, a group of 15 business delegates, or rather entrepreneurs from Oman, under the auspices of DG SME, came to Singapore to spend about 5 days of capacity building, building up their internal capabilities, financial business, etc., etc. And all these 15, call it globally rated enterprise companies, have actually benefited. They use the tools. With the tools, they are able to develop their own diagnostics, their own business plan, okay, and as well as a blueprint or framework or action, or roadmap on what needs to be achieved in the next 12 months in specific KPIs, in specific areas. So, they, of course, in the beginning, because it's a new product for them, it becomes a challenging thing to interpret certain dimensions. But after that, it's easy to use. And they've produced beautiful and pragmatic action plans, achievable action plans. And the thing that comes with the tools, I must add, is that the element of trust between the advisor and the SMEs. That's important. When you build that trust, whatever tool you put across to them, they will tell you all the true facts and true information. And that's what we achieved across all the 15 Omani businesses that came to Singapore to build their own capabilities. I think this is where the tools are certainly designed to be friendly, use, and trust.
Good news indeed. Okay. Any other comment? Just Salah? Robert? Okay, I think thank you very much for the speakers and the panelists, and thank you for being so attentive to the discussion. We need more time, but at least this forum can open up a new chapter of discussion of SME and how SME can help Islamic finance and also help building the nation through SME in this country. With that, allow me or join me to welcome and to thank the speakers on the stage by having big hand to them. Thank you.